Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Campbell with Mother's Milk Bank of Tennessee. This is the 13th year that TIPQC has had an annual meeting, the first year this virtual. And so this is my first year to do a virtual annual meeting for the Milk Bank. TIPQC, Brenda Barker, Steve, and the team have been so kind to let us have this venue each year to bring everyone up to date with what's happening with the Milk Bank. I think one of the things you'll notice right off the bat is that the slide looks a little bit different. You don't see our little milk drop baby down in the corner this year. That's because he's finally been delivered and we're moving up and maturing, and we're getting in position to actually have a milk bank in the state of Tennessee. So we're very excited about that opportunity, and we want to share it with you here today. So I wanted to thank TIPQC for this opportunity to present. And I also wanted to let you know that we are under the Human Milk Bank Association of North America. So we are considered a developing milk bank with them. They currently have 31 milk banks across the states and Canada. We are one of 3 that is still in the developing stages. So with that little introduction, I'm going to go back to what our mission statement is. So our mission statement is to collect, process, and dispense donor human milk to fragile infants who would not otherwise have access to it. The Mother's Milk Bank also works to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding for all babies as the best early nutrition. And you'll see, in addition to our logo at the bottom there, we have a precious little baby. You may recall in previous presentations that we've done that we played the NPR interview of a mother and father that were at one of our hospitals in Nashville. The mother had had previous breast surgery and thought there was not going to be a problem. Her surgeon had explained that she would not be able to breastfeed. She did not think that was going to be a problem because formula was available. However, her precious little one was born at 25 weeks gestation. And so she was so thankful when the hospital where she delivered offered pasteurized donor human milk for her little one. We've been able to make contact with this family, and they have agreed to let little Ruby be our spokesbaby. So we are very grateful for that, and you're going to see her in some future slides here. We owe our origins really to this precious man, Dr. Reddy Dan Reddy, who first gave us a toolkit for use of donor milk in the NICU. He was able to demonstrate that once they were able to get moms interested in breastfeeding their tiny little babies, that they were successful in increasing the breastfeeding rates overall. And when they substituted the mom's breast milk, if she didn't have enough, with donor human milk that had been pasteurized, they were able to markedly reduce the incidence of necrotizing enterocolitis in these tiny little babies. It's interesting, that was in 2010 that he presented that the first time. It's interesting that a year later, the Surgeon General's call to action, for action number 12, was that we needed to increase availability of safe banked donor milk for fragile infants. So Tennessee, kudos to Tennessee again, because we were really on the cutting edge. We were already looking at this issue of how to help babies that are so tiny and so fragile, even before it became a national imperative. So overview of our milk bank. Many of you have been before, so you know that we were founded in 2014. We're now operating 12 milk drop-off depots across the state. We're led by a passionate team of doctors, nurses, mothers, and supporters. Our mission is to give life. Mother's milk is life for a baby. To give milk, to provide pasteurized donor human milk, and to give time. I'm going to brag today on an incredible group of volunteers who are helping us in this project. And our goal for 2021 is we finally want to have a pasteurization facility in Middle Tennessee. Here's Ruby's story. We want to give life. I told you that her mother was thinking she'd be able to give her formula, but Ruby came at 25 weeks gestation, weighing only 1 pound and 9 ounces. Her mom did not have milk because of the surgery that she'd had years before. And I just love this picture of Ruby because it looks like she's blowing kisses to thank the mothers and babies who donated their milk so that she could have a good outcome. And here she is just laughing and just a happy child. She's about 4 years old now, and mom says she's doing great. So we have milk. We've been really blessed, especially in 2020. We were surprised. We've had collectively over 350,000 ounces of milk donated by our amazing Tennessee mothers since the first depot opened in 2016. But this past year, we were really concerned. There were months where we weren't certain what the actual final count was going to be. But we had over 150,000 ounces in 2020, which is a 50% increase despite COVID-19. So we were very proud of all the hard work that our lactation consultants have done. And this is probably a great time to stop and say happy IBCLC Day, Happy Lactation Consultant Day, because that's today. Now, what about COVID? You've heard a lot about COVID in this wonderful meeting that we've been having. A lot of folks were concerned about it. Pasteurization kills the COVID virus. Actually, in the past, they have inoculated pasteurized milk with Ebola, run it through the pasteurization again, and they could not obtain the Ebola virus at the end of the second pasteurization. So it's clear that pasteurization kills most of the viruses. There's one pesky bacteria that grows, and we have to deal with that, and that is the Bacillus cereus bacteria. I call it the cereus bacteria for milk banks because it is a spore former. And when the milk is pasteurized at the pasteurization temperature, it actually activates the spores so the bacteria can grow. But as far as other bacteria and other viruses, pasteurization kills them. The good news is pasteurization does not destroy the COVID antibodies. So there actually was some research done in the Netherlands to prove this. And there were thoughts that we might be able to use pasteurized donor milk to help even some adult patients, although I'm not certain how far that research has progressed. People are giving their time to help us. We just had this amazing team of volunteers from all over the state. And I want to thank everyone. Tiana, you can see yourself there in that picture. And Helen Scott's over there on the right-hand side. So these are just some of the people that have been so helpful with us. And this was at the TIPQC meeting last year. And boy, I just echo everyone's comments that I'm looking forward to next year and hoping we can be all together again. So how did we set up the system for the milk bank? Well, we have a lot of folks volunteering their time. And one of the things that we came up with, actually, Bruce Campbell, my husband, came up with this concept, was to have state directors so that we would have directors overseeing everything that's happening throughout the state of Tennessee. And we looked at 3 different areas where this would be useful. First, of course, is fundraising, because anything that you want to do that's worthwhile requires financial support. Second was depot development. And so we've been very blessed that Tracy McMahon, who was the director of the first depot at Nashville General Hospital, has assumed that responsibility of overseeing all the depots throughout the state. And then, of course, we need community outreach, because without awareness in the community of the importance of this precious entity, this pasteurized donor milk, no one would know that they could donate their milk. So we really appreciate Brister and Helen Scott. And actually, the four of us, sorry to leave you out in the middle there, Tracy, for a second, but the four of us are the founders of the milk bank. It turned out that Brister and Helen were working with Dr. Dan Reddy in Memphis. And Dr. Dan Reddy, on all our webinars about breastfeeding, kept saying, we need a milk bank in Tennessee. And I had seen the advantages of donor milk use in the NICU in Nashville and the importance of breastfeeding. And so we wanted to start a milk bank. And when we went to start it, lo and behold, we were told by the state, you can't start a milk bank in Tennessee because someone already has. And so kudos to Brister and Helen for being the folks that actually got this thing started. We quickly went to Memphis and met them, and the rest, as they say, is history, because we've been collaborating ever since. The next step then, after state directors, was to have regional directors. We wanted to do this because no one knows your region of the state and the needs and the benefits of what you have in your area better than the people who actually live there. So Helen was gracious enough to become our West Tennessee representative. I'm looking after Middle Tennessee. Christy Phillips came on board. She's a dynamo at Erlanger and got things started there. Pat Steimer, that you may hear from later, is doing a fantastic job in East Tennessee. And April Morrison is our newest regional director, and she's working very hard in Northeast Tennessee to see if she can't help establish a depot there. So underneath each of these 5 ladies are subcommittees for fundraising, depot development, and community outreach. And that's how we're trying to spread the word throughout the state. How to recruit mothers to donate their milk, how to get depots going, and how to increase the work that we're doing. These ladies also give their time, and I cannot say enough good things about these ladies. These are our depot directors that are scattered all over the state. They work long hours. I think every single one of them is a lactation consultant. They work long hours helping mothers to breastfeed. And then on top of that, they run the depots at their facilities. So they receive frozen breast milk from the mothers, and then they make certain that that gets shipped on to the pasteurization facility, which for right now remains Austin, Texas's milk bank. They are our mentor milk bank. The way that HMBANA has set things up, the Human Milk Banking Association in North America, if you want to start a milk bank, you have to have someone overlook what you're doing, and you will have to have accreditation from HMBANA before you can start processing and releasing milk for use in your area. We finally have an executive board, which was a requirement of HMBANA. Just recently, within the past year, we were able to recruit these wonderful people to help us. I won't go into details about everything, but they have contributed so much so far that it would take me several hours to tell you all the wonderful things that they've done. But they've helped all across the board with looking for grant writers, bringing in funds, doing fundraising efforts over the holidays. We had one of our board members was successful in getting over $7,000 donated, just with gifts from people that he contacted and said, I think this is a worthy cause. Would you consider contributing to it? We're still in the process of completing our medical advisory board. We need a neonatologist and an obstetrician to complete that. This is, again, a requirement of HMBANA for the milk bank. This board is more just in case we have questions about processing the milk or safety of the milk or issues with distribution of the milk. These are folks that we can call upon to help us with that. We're very blessed that Marguerite Johnston has agreed to be the pediatrician on our advisory board. She is well known in the Middle Tennessee area. She's a real advocate for breastfeeding and has been for years. She helped to establish the Breastfeeding Friendly initiative with St. Thomas Midtown here in Nashville. Walter Phillips, Phil Phillips, is a microbiologist, now retired, but he is very knowledgeable in the field of microbiology, and we've already had wonderful discussions about how to deal with this serious bacillus that I talked to you about earlier. And then Jane Kershaw is on board. She also is retired, but she was responsible for starting the lactation program at Centennial Medical Center in Nashville, and is very knowledgeable, very well read, and is constantly sending us articles about what's happening in the lactation field. So we're very appreciative of these folks, and we're looking forward to finding the neonatologist and obstetrician to finish the group here. Volunteers have been fantastic. They've helped recruit mothers to donate the milk. On the left there, you'll see April, our newest regional director for Northeast Tennessee. She was actually the first donor for the second depot that opened in Knoxville. So there she is with her sweet little baby and his stash of milk that he was sharing with other babies. We would love, love, love to have more stories and more pictures if you can help us with that. I know we have folks here today that are in the public health venue. We have folks here today that are working in NICUs. We have folks that are working in hospitals. And across the board, especially our lactation consultants, you're having access to parents who may be willing to share their stories. A lot of times folks like to share their stories and tell you what happened with their baby and why they have too much milk or why they didn't have enough milk. You see in the middle there, I'm coming in the hospital with the stash of milk from our very first donor in Tennessee, who donated quite a bit of her milk to Nashville General Hospital's depot. On the far right there, that's another precious picture of our little baby Ruby with her parents. And they were a story of a mom that needed milk for her baby. About 2 out of every 5 telephone calls that we get at the milk bank, which interestingly enough, Bruce Campbell is the receptionist for the milk bank, and he does a great job with the moms. About 2 out of every 5 calls, though, he tells us, are for moms needing milk. So the need is definitely there, and we need to get busy pasteurizing our Tennessee milk so we can satisfy those needs. Our volunteers have also helped spread awareness. They tell their friends about our mission. You can like our milk bank Facebook page. I understand, thanks to my son Ian, I'm now on Facebook. Please don't get upset with me if I don't friend you right away, because I'm new to that part of technology, but I'll get around to it, I promise. Talk about the milk bank where you work. Talk about it during your daily activities, at the gym, shopping, anywhere that you are. You're going to run into moms and babies, and you may be able to discuss with them what's going on in Tennessee. Are you aware that we have a milk bank? Well, I've never heard of that. What is it? It gives you an opportunity to spread the word. My husband actually carries business cards and brochures with him, and I can't tell you how many times I've been at the grocery store and I turn around and he's talking with a mom who has a baby and he's handing her a brochure. So you can also take the brochures to doctor's offices, baby clothing stores, daycare centers, anywhere there are moms and babies. You might want to pass the word for us. Finally, every volunteer is a fundraiser. So please consider helping us out financially. It's what we need right now to help us finish the milk bank so we can start pasteurizing. We are a 501c3, so your donations are tax deductible. Many times an employer will match your gift, so ask if that's a possibility. And consider becoming a monthly donor, because that really helps. If we have some cash flow that we can depend on, that's going to make a big difference as we get started. And tell your friends. Studies show that if you talk to 10 people, one of them who's aware of what you're doing will donate. So spread the word. Now, onward with our achievements. As I mentioned, we've had 12 drop-off depots across Tennessee. This is the one at Centennial, and these precious people surprised me, shocked me totally. They gave me a depot for my retirement in 2019. So you can see all it is a freezer. You see the freezer in the back there by the balloons, and a mama who's donating her milk. And I have the slide of them there for this particular presentation because this year, 2020, last year, they had the most number of ounces of anybody contributed in the state. So they deserve a celebration for that. We're working on that. Here's where our depots are located. The purple drops are where you can take your milk right now. The yellow drops are where we would like to have depots. So if you live near a yellow drop, let us know and we'll get you started on helping us get a depot there. And this is what we've done across the state since we opened the first 2 depots in 2016. It's no accident that we opened them in Nashville and at Regional 1 in Memphis. We are very committed to racial equality and equity, and we wanted to be certain that these mothers in these hospitals were aware of breastfeeding and its importance. It's been demonstrated time and time again that if a hospital opens a drop-off milk depot, the statement to the community is that that hospital values breastfeeding and human milk. And that can go a long way in helping you to convince your patients that this is the best nutrition for their baby. We're talking about pasteurizing milk and having donor milk. The best food for a baby, if possible, is his mother's own milk. And that's really what the message is that we want to pass on to folks. However, there are instances, like I've mentioned, where a mom, for one reason or another, just cannot produce milk. And when that's the case, the American Academy of Pediatrics has said that the next best thing for babies is pasteurized donor human milk. So that's our whole purpose for being. Oh, and you can see, look at the great celebration there. Each year, since we've opened depots, we've gotten more and more milk. So we should be in a good position to be able to supply all the NICUs in the state of Tennessee the first year that we're open. So our next step is pasteurization. This breast milk is vital for preemies. I've heard the lactation consultants more than once say, your breast milk is medicine for your baby. And it's true. So what's the difference between a milk bank and a milk depot? One of the struggles we've had and challenges we've had is if you listen to the media, each time we've opened a milk bank drop-off depot, that area of the state has said, oh, we just opened a milk bank in Knoxville, Chattanooga, Memphis, Knoxville. It's not the milk bank proper, it's just a place to collect the milk. So what's the difference? Well, we'll start on the right here with the milk depot. The milk depot usually is the depot director is likely to be a lactation consultant. So she's going to be managing donor relationships. She likely knows a lot of the mothers that are going to be coming and bringing her their milk. She collects their donated milk and stores it in a freezer. And then once the freezer has a certain volume of milk, she ships it to the milk bank to be pasteurized. She's an advocate for the milk bank, and she's involved in community outreach because she's talking to the mothers that she's assisting with breastfeeding and explaining why we have a milk bank, even though we're not pasteurizing our own milk yet. So what we want right now is we want to get over to the left side here and actually have the milk bank. Now, the responsibilities of the milk bank, we have to screen the mothers before we even accept the donation. So folks can't just drive up in their vehicle and drop off a bunch of milk. They have to be, the mother has to be screened, and that I'll get into a little more detail on another slide. The milk bank collects milk from the depots. It screens the milk. So we don't just screen the mother, we also screen the milk. We have to look for that serious bacillus that I told you about. We thaw the milk. We mix several mothers' milk together. We do ask the mothers to keep track of their medications, but occasionally a mom might forget that she had been on ampicillin for a couple of days and she didn't log that on the milk. And so the hope is that by mixing 4 or 5 mothers' milk together, that will dilute any medication that she might have inadvertently taken and not told us. We bottle the milk, then we pasteurize the milk. We have to screen the pasteurized milk because, as I mentioned, B. cereus grows, B. cereus, that's his first name is B, grows when you pasteurize the milk. So we have to screen it afterwards as well to make sure it didn't grow during the processing. Then the milk is immediately refrozen, and it's not released to the recipients until we're certain that it's microbiologically pure. So what about HMBANA? HMBANA now has 31 milk banks across the United States and Canada. I didn't tell you this, but when Dr. Dan Reddy did his presentation in 2010, there were 16 milk banks in the country. We were concerned because there seemed to be a big hole in this area. Since we tried to open, Mississippi has gotten a milk bank and Alabama's gotten a milk bank. So the hole wasn't as big as it was when we first were trying to have the milk bank. But nevertheless, there are enough patients. And with Tennessee's track record with prematurity and sick babies and NICU days and so forth, this is a place we need to have a milk bank. So we're going to zero in on Tennessee. How does a milk bank work? Well, first of all, you have the mother who says, you know, I'm thinking I might like to donate my milk. Sorry, trying to use my little arrow. I don't know if that's working. She contacts the milk bank. A medical screening history is taken. She is required to get letters from her obstetrician saying that there's no health reasons why she shouldn't be a donor, and also from her pediatrician stating that there's not going to be any undue risk to her baby by her donating her milk. And I will take just a second here to say that there are some moms, and this is very sad, but we want to celebrate them as well. There are some moms whose babies don't survive the newborn period, and yet they've been pumping and they have milk. They will make milk even if they deliver a baby. They start making milk after about 16 weeks of gestation. So you could have a mother deliver a baby at 20 weeks and she would start making milk. So we do have a program for bereaved mothers that if they wish to donate milk, they can go through the screening process. And typically, the screening process for moms is they have to have a minimum of 100 ounces of milk to donate because it's very costly. It's about $250 minimum per mother to go through all the screening to even be approved as a donor. But for the bereaved mothers, we make an exception. And if they have 1 milliliter of breast milk and they want to donate it in remembrance of their baby, the milk banks will take it. They still have to go through the blood testing and the medical histories, but we want to honor their wish to donate. We had a mother who had a baby that I believe, if I'm remembering the story correctly, her baby had a severe congenital heart anomaly and died in Nashville. And that mother donated milk in memory of her baby up until the limit, which is 1 year after the baby's birth. She had this anecdotal story that her teenage son went to the freezer to get a popsicle because he had an upset stomach and she'd recommended he go get the popsicle. And he came back and he said, "Mom, I could hardly find the popsicles because there's so much frozen milk in there." And she thought, "Oh my goodness, here it comes." Well, he came over and he gave her a hug and he said, "I am so proud of what you're doing." All right, so once the mother has the history, she has a blood test done. Even though she's had blood testing during her pregnancy, we rescreen right about the time that she's going to be donating. Then she can express her milk, and she's given instructions on the best way to collect her milk so that it's safe. But many mothers have already been in that process and have freezers full, and we certainly accept it because we will be screening it for bacteria anyway. So once she's approved as a donor, then she can bring her milk to the milk drop-off depots, which is what these mothers have done that have brought all those ounces of milk in Tennessee. Then there will be the inbound testing that we talked about. We might do a scanning to see what the content of the milk is. Then the several mothers' milks are pooled like we talked about. We don't pasteurize like this. This is just a nifty way of showing you pasteurization. There's no direct heat. It's actually a shaking water bath that the bottles are submerged in. So we have to make certain that we have tamper-proof lids and so forth. So it's very particular how we do all this. Then we go down to the outbound testing to make sure those final cultures are okay. The frozen milk is stored. Typically, there will be a prescription for the baby to get the donor milk. So in the hospitals can order milk to have in supply, but there will be a prescription because they'll be writing an order on the baby's chart to give them the donated milk. And then, of course, once we have the frozen milk and the prescription, then we will ship it out to the hospitals where the end result is the baby will be the recipient. Now, you might wonder in all this processing, can there be breakdowns? Have there been recalls of milk? Have there been complications from HMBANA milk banks? And actually, the safety track record for HMBANA milk banks is really stellar. There was one instance where they thought in a hospital that it was donor milk that had caused some infections in their babies. And when they went back and looked at it, it actually turned out that it was a blender in the processing room in the hospital that was inappropriately cleaned. And when they added the milk fortifier product and used the blender gently, that had actually carried the bacteria over from one stash to the next. So we have a very good safety record. So what does HMBANA require? What do we have to do to be even considered as a milk bank? Well, the first thing is research, research, research. And trust me, Helen and Brister and I and some of our other folks have traveled to different milk banks looking at the processing to figure out how we needed to structure our milk bank. You have to be registered as a nonprofit organization. You need to study PATH's Human Milk Banking Resource Kit, which is an international document on how milk banks should be structured across the world. You need to conduct a needs assessment. We certainly have needs in our state. We've proven that. We need to understand the regulatory requirements for the FDA and CDC. We need to review HMBANA's own guidelines because they have guidelines on how to operate a human milk bank. We needed to create a business plan, and we're very grateful to Brister Scott for creating the original business plan. We've only had to make minor adjustments to that. We needed to establish a board of directors, which I told you we've just done in 2020. But what do we still need on our to-do list? We need to establish the medical advisory board. We have 3 out of the 5 required members. We need to raise the startup funding of at least $150,000. And to date, with all of our efforts, all of our fundraising opportunities, and a single grant from one corporation, our current balance is about $45,000. So you can see that there's a real gap here. And that's why we're giving you this information, so you can help us with that. We need to acquire staff members. We need to complete a preventative controls qualified training, which I'm in the process of doing right now. It's super interesting. The background that I've had with 2QC and working on quality improvement products has really been exceedingly useful and helpful in that training. I also need to complete a course in good manufacturing practices and the current good manufacturing practices, which I'm also in the process of right now. And then once we've done all of that, then we need to achieve HMBANA accreditation. And right now, the accreditation itself costs $5,000, so that's a big chunk of change. This was our original plan for a 4,000 square foot milk bank, and the idea here was that the milk would come in the front door, go into the walk-in freezer. There was a research lab here to do the initial testing on it. There was an area that was for social activities, and moms could come and pump and breastfeed. There was the processing room where the milk would be stored, and the dishwasher, all the clean utility would be here. Then the milk analysis and the final processing would be here. The milk would be frozen, waiting to be sent out. This was a storage area for all the shipping supplies, and then the milk would go back out. So it was a linear process, coming in one end and going out the other. And then these were the initial equipment and personnel requests that we had. With COVID, one thing we've discovered is we can probably do this in about half the size. Where are we going to locate the milk bank? Middle Tennessee is truly ideal for us, and that's what we're focusing on right now, because it's going to get us within 4 hours of servicing, getting milk in from our depots and back out to the NICUs in a very timely fashion. And that will be one of the advantages that we will be able to offer our NICUs. Right now, we have NICUs that are getting donor milk, but for example, I know that where I used to work at Centennial before I retired, they're getting their milk from Boston. I think in West Tennessee, the last I heard was they originally were getting it from North Texas. I think they're now possibly getting it from Ohio. So why should we have, get milk from all these distances when we could have everything within driving distance and be where the milk needs to be within just a few hours? So now we're looking for about half the square feet, but with room to grow. We need to obtain the equipment. Our first pasteurizer is on order. I thought it would be very cool if it arrived as I'm doing this presentation, but I haven't seen the UPS truck yet, so I guess not. We need to recruit staff to screen the mothers. And again, these staff originally would have been in the facility, but most of this can be done remotely. Staff to pasteurize the milk obviously would have to be in the facility. Staff for operations, staff for marketing and fundraising. So in summary, we were founded in 2014. We have 12 milk drop-off depots currently operating across the state. That milk is all still going to Austin, Texas to be processed. We have a passionate team of doctors, nurses, mothers, and supporters. Our mission is to provide life-saving donor milk to at-risk babies in our state. And our goal for 2021 is to finally open the pasteurization facility. So thank you very much. Thank you to TIPQC for allowing this forum. Thank you to all the volunteers and the mothers. And thank you to Pediatrics, which is our sole corporate sponsor at this point. And please contact us. The whole reason we set up the regional system was you could contact the person that's in your region and tell them how you'd like to help. They would love to put you on those subcommittees and start working together to get us over the goal line. So we thank you. We're open for questions.
There's some questions here. I think I just answered about where we send our milk, and that's Austin Milk Bank. I hope my mic is not a problem. Is it too loud? I tried changing the settings that Tiana sent, but unfortunately it's not working, I guess.
Sounds okay.
But I think I answered one of the questions, whoever asked the question about where we send our milk. Susan, I don't know if you want to say any more about that.
We've been very, very happy with the quality of the Austin Milk Bank. Kim Updegrove, their executive director, has actually been on the team that helped work with the FDA and CDC to show them that the milk banking process, the holder pasteurization process, was very safe. There are some other processes out there, and there's some other milk banks out there that are not nonprofits, and they are pretty aggressive sometimes in their marketing. And so we have to be careful. Sometimes they offer to pay mothers for milk. We do not pay mothers for milk. It's all out of the goodness of their hearts that they want to help the other babies in Tennessee, that they donate their milk. We've had some fun calls. I remember several years ago, we got a call from a mom who said, "Help, I've got 3 freezers full of my breast milk and my husband shot a deer this year." So we helped her with that. But I don't know if that's answering any questions, but we'd love to have stories. We really need more stories about moms and babies. So please, if you're in a situation where you can help us get those stories, we're happy to work with you on that. We actually have a young lady, Victoria Roselli, who is one of our original planning committee. She's living in Hawaii right now, but she's perfectly willing to write up stories if you want to interview moms. And we have a little interview sheet we can offer you if the mom is needing milk in the NICU. So I can't see everybody. You don't have your pretty pictures there.
There is a comment from Adele says, "Thanks for the presentation, Dr. Campbell. Little Ruby, how wonderful. The branding looks great. congrats on the team's progress.
Oh, thank you.
And
now I can see a couple people. Yay. There's Tracy and Pat. That's good. So you can see some of our people. They're on the screen right now. Lucretia, you have such a pretty picture, but you're not there. It's just your picture. All right.
We just want to let everybody who's present, we want to thank you for being here and joining us to learn more about the milk bank. And if you, like Susan said, if you have stories or pictures or we'd like more pictures of the from the depots of the mothers who are actually donating the milk, because they are so important to the work we're doing. So if you're able to get their pictures or encourage them to post on our Facebook page, that would be great.